edition. Good evening all. I'm Shashina Roll-Parkinson. As always, it is so great to have you with us. Topping news this evening, the Rand Memorial Hospital is one of the many public entities devastated by Hurricane Durian. And as a result, the bulk of the Rand's operations are now conducted at an emergency field hospital by an international organization, the Samaritan's Purse. The Minister of Health is giving an update tonight on restoration efforts at Grand Bahamas' premier healthcare facility. Jamila Mizik has our top story.
It's been several weeks post-Hurricane Durian, and most of the Rand's Memorial Hospital remains inoperable. According to Minister of Health Dr. Dwayne Sands, that's because the Rand Memorial Hospital was dealt a very serious blow.
There was flooding with contaminated water. I'm not just talking about rainwater, but stool or sewage contaminated water. Even though we cleaned it immediately, we cannot be certain that it is a safe environment for the delivery of health care. And subsequently, there has been an overgrowth of mold in about 75% of the facility, so it is shut. The only parts of the RAND that are open include the emergency room, the dia ward, the x-ray department, and the lab area.
He says they've agreed to rip out everything that has been contaminated to see what is usable. And when they're done with that process, if it is safe by international standards, they will rebuild the RANds temporarily.
We recognize that the only feasible solution for the RAND is going to be a purpose-built, climate change resilient new structure on a green site. And that is our goal. Clearly, that can't happen next week or next month or even this year. And so in order to take over when Samaritan's Purse is done, to have a functioning acute care facility where babies can be born, where surgery can be performed, where inpatients can be housed for the 50,000 people of Grand Bahama is going to be very, very important. We expect to be able to have completed most of that work within the next 5 to 6 months.
Now, the minister adds that there has been a tremendous amount of international support, including that of the Samaritan's Purse, which he notes has become the acute care hospital for Grand Bahama post-Hurricane Durian.
We have been in discussions with them this morning, and we will follow this up with a formal request for an extension. There's an integration of services with our local staff. So we now have doctors and nurses and other staff members who are now working in the Samaritan's Purse facility. The ratio is now about 60-40, 70-30, with international staff being in the majority and local staff being in the minority. But it's anticipated that as we move towards the end of their engagement, that it will be entirely staffed by our local staff members.
Jamila Mizik, ZNS Network News.
Now, earlier today, the Minister of Health held a meeting with the staff at the Rand Memorial Hospital, one that he says was quite necessary.
Thought it very important that the leadership of the health system should come and listen to their concerns, to field questions, to answer their questions, to listen to their comments, to be sure that we were all in line, and most importantly, so that they are able to contribute to the plans moving forward.
Now, he says he wants the staff to know that they are stronger as a team.
We have made it this far and will only continue to make it if we recognize the contributions made by every single one of our human resources, every single one of our staff members. And so it was very important for me to be here today. It was a lively exchange. It was a helpful exchange. It was a positive exchange. And I think now, as I sit down with the senior physician staff now, that we will plot the roadmap to rebuilding the health system in Grand Bahama.
In other news, the Grand Bahama Port Authority hosting major stakeholders to a media briefing today to outline the pace of recovery to date. The Grand Bahama Airport Company among the many agencies providing details of the current status of the facility and the way forward. Here again is Jamila Mizik.
CEO of Hutchinson Port Holdings, which is responsible for the Grand Bahamas International Airport, the Freeport Container Port, and the Freeport Harbor Company, Godfrey Smith says, despite Hurricane Durian's mass destruction to Grand Bahama Island, the container port is fully operational and all employees are still engaged.
It has been operational from within the first week after the hurricane. It sustained minimal damages. Largely it was cosmetic, some moderate stuff or minor stuff on the buildings and so, but basically it was all, it was very well guarded or protected during the hurricane. One thing at the harbor I want to let you know that as gracious as we were prior to this point, as of the 15th, we will start back up on tariff. A lot of repairs has to happen, and now we got to start to pay the piper. So I just want to make that note to the general population also.
But he contends that the biggest issue is the airport.
There's nothing that happened at the airport that could have been predicted. The airport has actually had every building that is on the facility has been damaged to some degree or another. In fact, so much so that we had considered that several of them were literally write-offs. We are learning to find that we are still able to work through some of those, and I think that has now in some ways delayed the restart plan. But the good news is, if it is that, we believe that somewhere around the 15th of November that we should be able to open the airport up to commercial flights.
Smith says it is not going to be an easy fix.
There will be no U.S. pre-clearance at the airport, in my view, for months to come. The facilities that we will put into the airport will be temporary facilities while we concentrate on restarting those commercial operations until we can go further with long-term planning on how the airport is re-engaged in its fullest state. What has been the good fortune of the airport, clearly, and again, this is the unpredictability of hurricanes. We don't know how it happened. We just knew that it happened. We sustained, or somehow the runway was sustained. God forbid if something had happened to that one runway, what would have been the issue here on the island at this point?
The CEO says domestic, commercial flights and general aviation aircrafts providing relief are still operational, adding that the port understands the commercial and business needs of international flights. However, Smith believes that they have a good plan in place and will soon put that plan into action to restore the airport.
We know one thing, that we won't go back to business as usual at the airport. There's no point in doing some of the things that we've done, one terminal here, another terminal here, and that kind of thing. But we are firm in our plans. We have the support of our corporate shareholders that we will move ahead, and we will move ahead to the point where our focus is simply restoring the airport back to a commercial, international operation in the shortest possible time that we could do it.
Jamila Mizik, ZNS Network News.
In other news, dangerous Hurricane Durian will be etched in the minds of Bahamians and people around the world for a lifetime. It's been over a month since the passing of the storm, and 30 persons are still unaccounted for. Tonight, the officer in charge of Grand Bahama is assuring family members that they have and will continue to do whatever is in their power to search for those listed as missing. Queens Cove, Over the Bridge, High Rock, and McLeanstown are the areas where persons have been reported missing. In fact, a total of 30 persons remain unaccounted for. Meantime, the local police, non-governmental agencies, and international partners were part of an active search and recovery mission.
So there's a lot of talk about persons may have been swept out at sea, may have been floating about. We've put to bear every resource we've had available to the police department to go out and seek. And so we've done aerial searches, we've done searches by vessels, ensuring that we've checked our shorelines, checked areas out at sea within prescribed perimeters based on the information arriving at the police desk, where a person may have last been seen or known to have been during the time of the hurricane.
ACP Samuel Butler adds that Peace Riverside K-9 unit has also been on the ground combing through up to 7 feet of rubble.
Had some 7 cadaver dogs here on the ground with some 14 handlers who who correlated with our K9 and officers from there, and the CDU department, the fire department, and any other number of officers who, during those teams, going out searching in areas where there was a possibility.
And even though they have gotten some 15 or 16 hits from these canines, their attempts were unsuccessful.
Unfortunately, in our movement, we had faith in our canines, because in many of those spots, we did find animal remains in terms of a dog or a raccoon. And so we recognized the dog was actually really doing the job. But we did not come up with human remains.
9 bodies have been recovered so far, and with 30 persons still reported as missing, the police chief says they have not given up.
Any piece of information is important information to the police. And so whether you're seeing something, whether your nostril is drawn to a particular scent of concern, we would be pleased to receive that information. Some of you have been doing it already. And once that information reaches our command desk, we certainly have officers out on the fields examining those specific areas and doing the best to see if there's any possibility of recovery. But if you know, if you are aware that some member of your community or some neighbor is not being accounted for or heard from, you know the individuals who may have been almost like in the family island setting, like Grand Bahama, East Grand Bahama. Basically, everybody know everybody. And so if anybody by any chance is not accounted for, we'll ask you to be responsible, be brave enough to come and say that to the police.
Switching gears now, Area Vice President of the Bahamas Union of Teachers, Quentin LaRota, responding to what he calls incredulous information circulating on social media, blaming teachers for the delay in the opening of public schools on Grand Bahama.
Teachers work for the Ministry of Education. Teachers are employees. Teachers don't decide when school open or close. That is decided by the Ministry of Education. The teachers don't do the repairs on the schools. That comes under Ministry of Works and Education and whomever they contract to do the job. And so we have no control as teachers as to the opening of school after hurricane. In the agreement we signed with the Ministry of Education, it's the Minister of Education who announced the opening of school after natural disaster, which means that it's the minister's responsibility to determine if the schools are safe enough in the condition that which they can open. He has stated that for the schools to be open, they must be repaired, the mold remediation must be done, the water salinity must be acceptable, and the pressure. And so that is what we wait on those things to be done. And then the teachers will happily report the work.
Well, LaRota says those teachers should be commended, as many of them are assisting in various areas of the hurricane restoration process.
Many teachers have messaged me and they are ready to get back to work. Some have taken it upon themselves to tutor kids at home. Some are tutoring their neighbors' children. We have teachers who are going around the island helping with repairs of homes, putting tops on roof, taking out old rock sheets out of people's houses. Teachers who are at churches giving out food and distributing goods. So the teachers have been heavily involved in the recovery efforts in the community. And I think all of them, including me, we resent greatly these narrow-minded, ill-informed individuals who will wish to, in their frustration, to cast teachers in a bad light because the schools have not yet opened.
Now to the island of Abaco, where recovery is said to be slow. Parts of that island was virtually decimated when the eye of the monster storm passed over the Abacos on September 1st. The death toll is said to be over 50, with many more reported missing. Today we spoke with the MP for South Abaco, James Albury, about recovery and restoration efforts.
Slowly, we're rounding that bend from, of course, from relief to now, recovery and gradually moving into reconstruction. Work has already begun clearing, with heavy equipment operators what was formerly the shanty town areas. So that process has started of, clearing, the roads are being cleared, those areas, the shantytown areas are being cleared with debris. Of course, that has to be a very, meticulous process, but, we're shifting now from relief to recovery and reconstruction, so we still have a long ways to go in terms of, for lack of a better word, restoring utilities and the basic, normalcies of life, that would make people safe from returning, including security and, government services. We have to get that to a point where it's operating in a way where you can realistically expect people to be able to do the things they need to do throughout their day-to-day life. But, in terms of power restoration, in the central and northern areas, we're still a ways away from that. It's going to be a very long process.
The South Abaco MP says while residents are slowly returning to the Abacos, a major issue right now is security.
Anytime you have any sort of catastrophe or national disaster, especially on this level, it's going to bring out the best in people, and it brings out the worst in people as well. So persons don't want to feel as if they're, if they cannot reliably contact the police or the defense force or any other law and order maintaining body on the island, that has to, and steps are being made, of course, to do that, because that's incredibly important. But you have to make people feel safe and that their safety is being actively looked out for, in terms of patrolling and, maintaining law and order and, going after persons who are looting or engaging maybe even in worse behavior.
Tonight we salute another group that is making a difference in this post-Durian Grand Bahama. A team of NEMA volunteers teaming up this past weekend with the Miami Dolphins and Mission Resolve to bring relief to hurricane-damaged areas in the Freeport community. The volunteers tagging along and visiting Regency Park and Heritage subdivisions, two of the communities that incurred massive flooding. They delivered hurricane relief supplies to each home, from cleaning supplies to generators and food supplies. The Miami Dolphins mascot went along, and together they brought smiles to the faces of the children in those communities. Grand Bahama says a thank you to the Miami Dolphins, Mission Resolve, and local team leaders for making a difference. Stay with us, there's more news on the other side of the break.